Welcome into a week 2 edition of Win the Line presented by the 33rd team. Tanner Kern joined alongside the former CFL defensive lineman Max Forde. Max, huge show today, but a lot happened in week 1. We want to talk about it real quick. So we're going to start with the segment called Win the Week. Which offensive or defensive line did you think absolutely dominated and deserves this award?
Well, man, it's hard for me to stray against the obvious one here. The Dallas Cowboys just obliterated the New York Giants this week. Every time Daniel Jones stepped him back, he was uncomfortable. You can't not go with them.
So I wanted to go with the Dallas Cowboys. I really did. I'm not a Cowboys fan. So I'm going to go with their opponent for this week, the New York Jets offensive line. I know they weren't great, but they found a way to win the game. It's obviously tough when you lose your quarterback, and everyone knew what they were doing. It was run, quick game. So the fact of the matter that the defense knew exactly what they were going to do on every single play, and they still found a way to put themselves in position to score points and ultimately win that game. I'm going to give my award to the New York Jets. You're going to give it to the Dallas Cowboys, and they will probably get it next week. So I think the Dallas Cowboys are definitely going to dominate the Jets this week, but we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Two deserving teams, though, this week for sure.
For sure. So we start with our injury segment. Now, obviously, it's Wednesday, so we have a lot of time before Sunday rolls around. Some of these guys are questionable, but we do have one injury for tomorrow night. We'll start with Christian Darrisaw, offensive tackle for the Minnesota Vikings, going against the Philadelphia Eagles. Some interesting notes in this game. The line is actually moving in favor of the Minnesota Vikings with less money, so we have some reverse line movement there. But this is going to be a pretty big injury. I think Kirk Cousins needs Darrisaw in the game because that Eagles front is pretty fierce. What do you think about this one?
Oh yeah, you said it. That Eagles front is nasty. They've been good at the top of their game last couple of years here, and they've just got guys that they can roll in and take go against any offensive line there. So I think it's going to be a tough test if Darisaw's out for their backup there, Udo.
Yeah, for sure. And the line movement is just a little interesting on that game, no matter what. So keep an eye there. We have two injuries for the Baltimore Ravens up front. Ronnie Stanley, offensive tackle, and then center Tyler Linderbaum. This is going to be interesting because the Bengals are good up front. They're also very hungry after last week's loss. They were horrendous against the Browns. So I think they're going to come out and really try to take it to this Ravens offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they're missing Ronnie Stanley, that's a big one. But they do have a guy in Pat McCarry that Harbaugh is out there talking about. He's not concerned with what he's going to get from Pat McCarry if he has to play. So that's nice to have him backing up Ronnie Stanley. Tyler Linderbaum might be the bigger miss if they don't have him. They'll be starting Sam Mustipher, who came over from Chicago last year, and he kind of had his ups and downs last year. So that center exchange too is a big one. So I think if they're missing both those guys, that's probably going to be the big one there.
Yeah, left tackles make the big bucks, but centers actually make it all work up front. So that's going to be a big injury, something to notice in the betting lines there. And then offensive tackle Andrew Thomas for the Giants. Looks like he's probably not going to play with a pulled hamstring going against the Cardinals. Shouldn't be that big of a deal, but the Cardinals impressed me a lot against Washington last week. They were in the backfield consistently. So how do you think this injury is going to impact the Giants?
Yeah, that Cardinals defense played a lot better than expected. Their offense couldn't get it done. That's why they ended up losing. But if they're missing Andrew Thomas, his backup actually also had an MRI yesterday. He was in practice today, so there's decent chance he'll be there, but he might be a little bit banged up. Either way, he's hurt, or if they miss him, go down to that third string tackle. It's going to be a little bit tougher, but that Cardinals matchup should be one that the Giants have win comfortably.
You would hope, especially after they were embarrassed last week against the Cowboys. Hopefully they have a little self-pride and try to take it to the Arizona Cardinals this week. But we have two massive mismatches we're going to break down right now, and then one that's a little more even. But the biggest mismatch of the week, I think, 49ers defense, who absolutely dominated the Pittsburgh Steelers unexpectedly against the Rams offensive line. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I think both of those matchups that these two teams had went unexpectedly last week. You had the 49ers, obviously one of the top defensive lines in the league, but you didn't expect them to just run away with it the way they did. They've got a two deep that might start for a lot of teams in this league on the defensive line. They had Drake Jackson have a really good game this week. Kerry Hyder's always been a guy you can depend on. And I haven't even talked about Nick Bosa yet, who's still working his way into football shape. Obviously, he's in great physical shape, but you don't really get into football shape without playing. So he's going to be another week into that. And this is going to be a tough one for the Rams, even though they, like I said, also performed unexpectedly well. Had, I think, the third lowest pressure rate according to 33rd team's edge tool there. So they had a good game against Seattle, but nobody's mistaking the San Francisco front with Seattle's front. So
No, 49ers are going to bring it this week. They held Pittsburgh to 239 yards last week and 41 rushing yards. A lot of people thought Pittsburgh was going to be able to at least run the ball and move the football a little bit, but this 49ers defense was nasty. And as you were saying, Nick Bosa really didn't even play that much. So this is concerning if you're a Rams better in this spot. Rams didn't give up a sack. So how many sacks do you think the Rams give up this week, knowing they were perfect last week?
Oh man, if they don't give up a sack again, I'll definitely have to adjust my priors because I just don't see it going that well. Shoot, the way the 49ers can play, I put it at around 4. I just know that defense has got the guys to do it, and like I said, they're getting contributions from everywhere. Also, didn't mention Javon Hargrave, another guy who just gets after the pass from the interior. They can run out those subgroups, but they don't need to with defensive tackles like that. So, a lot of different combinations that they can put out there to get it done, give the offensive line different looks.
Yep, 5 sacks last week, 34 total yards lost for the Rams or for the 49ers going against the Steelers. One prop we're going to look at in this game, Matthew Stafford threw for 334 yards last week. I know we're bringing in the secondary a little bit here, but if the 49ers are in his face consistently this week, I don't see him getting to 300. His prop's going to be between 255 and 260. I'm leaning on the under. Kenny Pickett had 232 last week. I do expect them to be playing from behind. But this front is ridiculous. And I think Bosa is going to be in better shape this week and probably get a sack himself.
Yeah, and with Kenny Pickett, I think he played the entire game there. He's a young guy that they want to get reps, even in those bad situations. I think if it gets out of hand, Matthew Stafford probably gets yanked because he's an old guy. He doesn't need to see those extra reps. You just don't want him to get hurt. So I think if it gets out of hand, he gets pulled too. That's another way for you to win your under bet there. So I got to agree that you got to go under on that one.
The safe play is the under. If you believe in Matthew Stafford, take the over, but we're going to be all over the under there. Dallas defense versus the Jets offensive line. I think we got to flash back to last week in prime time when the Dallas defense absolutely beat up the New York Giants. Dallas didn't play that well on the offensive side of the ball. They didn't have to. The defense and special teams were great. They had 7 sacks for 47 yards lost. They held the Giants to 108 yards on the ground, 171 through the air. And the Giants were also 5 of 16 on third down. Do we see a similar result this week from the Dallas defense against the New York Jets offense?
Depends on how similar we're talking. I don't think it's going to be 40-0 again, but I do think that they're gonna impose their will there. They created an absolute burn the film kind of a game against the Giants for the Giants, not for them. They'll be watching that one on their highlight film. Yeah, they just did not let Daniel Jones get comfortable at all, and now you're going against Zach Wilson there. New quarterback, obviously, new this year. Didn't expect to have him starting. And so a guy that I think doesn't help his offensive line as much as Aaron Rodgers does, like in that Rodgers a lot of times would throw away the ball, throw on time, and basically help his offensive line not give up those sacks, which is a little bit interesting given that on the play he got hurt. It was a cut block, probably expected to be a quick game. But I mean, you played Division One offensive line. What's it like when you have a different quarterback back there that maybe isn't the same guy you're used to blocking for?
Well, first off, I'll say Zach Wilson kind of looks like the quarterback that plays the star quarterback in like a Disney movie or something. It's a different vibe here, but yeah, when you have a new quarterback come in, it's hard because one snap count right away. You're listening into a quarterback for the majority of your reps in the offseason and the preseason, and then you get a new guy. So right there, you're a little slow off the ball, and then you're trying to do a little too much. You're trying to get that early jump, especially when you're going up against a front that's just superior to yours, and you have a lot of good guys for the Cowboys. So I think we're going to see that from the Jets. I think we're going to see some procedural penalties, and that's going to start with Zach Wilson. But that's to be expected coming into this game. Now, one matchup that I want to look at, Mekhi Becton going against Micah Parsons. It's going to be a fun one. Tackle Becton versus the defensive end Parsons here. As a former CFL defensive lineman, you're going against an offensive line that's kind of on edge. They don't have a great quarterback in there. They might not be playing with most confidence in the world. What are you going to do? Or what's Micah Parsons going to do in this spot?
Well, I don't quite run like Micah Parsons does. He has that 4.3 speed. When you're going against a mountain of a man like Mekhi Becton, I think you use that. It's hard for a guy his size to get moving against a guy that can run that fast. And so, like you said, I think the procedure penalties, it's going to get in his head that he's going up against this just freak of nature athlete that can move that fast, has that much power. I think you get him moving with speed. And then maybe you set it up for later in the game where he's trying to bail out of there quick and you can counter inside with some kind of like hump move or something like that, spin move, whatever he wants to use. But I think just beat him with speed first, set up the counter rushes later in the game.
Yeah, a lot of speed, a lot of speed to power late in the game. I think that's a great way to describe it there. One prop that I want to take a look at here, Brees Hall. I believe he's probably going to be around 40 yards this week for his number. He had 127 on 10 carries last week. Again, the Jets offensive line filled with a bunch of fighters. I think we're going to see them fight, but I can't say he's going to go north of 40 yards this week against the Cowboys front that was sensational against the New York Giants last week. I'm going to take the under. How about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you again here. The other thing that we saw was they were limiting his snaps this last week. I'm sure he'll get a little bit more action, but um, there's no guarantee that he's going to get a ton of carries in this weekend's game. And so for him to hit, like he would have hit in the first couple rushes here this last week. But again, Cowboys front is not going to be like what they saw this week. So I think I'd have to take it under as well, just with still have a little bit of those injury concerns there,
Yeah.
as well as the front they're playing.
Yeah, you can't be hoping for the long explosive run just to hit this. You need consistency. I just don't see him being that consistent this week. The final matchup we're going to break down here on both sides, actually, a little DFS time. Raiders defense priced at $2,200 versus the Bills offensive line. Now, this may seem like a mismatch on paper, but Josh Allen loves to turn the ball over. The Raiders do have some very good pass rushers, one being Maxx Crosby, who was a machine last week. And I think Tyree Wilson's going to continue to get better. So do you see the Raiders containing the Bills and possibly being at least covering the spread, but possibly being in this game?
I think there's definitely a shot. I think if we were talking about DFS here, I think it's worth playing at that stone min price of $2,200. You can save that money, pay up somewhere else. I'm not saying that it's ever going to feel great to go against a guy that's considered one of the elite quarterbacks in this league, but there are some outs there. They have Maxx Crosby pinning his ears back, getting after the quarterback. They got the young guy over there. Um, yeah, he's also going to be making some plays, and so I expect him to be a little bit better than he was in his first game. And so I think there are some outs there. I'm not going to sit here and say I expect the Raiders to dominate, but at that 2,200 price, it's attractive as something that I think can fall their way.
Yeah, it's a value price for a team that's being disrespected, not only in DFS, in my opinion, but by bookmakers in multiple places. I think we're going to see a lot of trap and power from the Bills' offensive line this week, though, to keep them off guard. Also, that's going to help Josh Allen settle in. I think we'll see some QB trap and some QB power. His rushing total is going to be between 38 and 43 yards. That's what we're expecting. I know we have a 5-yard difference here, but would you play the over on, let's say 40 yards rushing?
That's a good line. I think I would take the over. I still think that Josh Allen is kind of their RB1 in addition to their QB1. He has been the last handful of years. There's been guys we want to see perform in running back position, but he makes their team go. And they just came off an embarrassing loss. I think they want to keep the ball in his hands.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to go the over there as well. I think he's going to carry the ball a lot, especially with turnover problems through the air. One final matchup here. Bills defense, $3,700, very high against the Raiders offensive line that I think is very underrated. You have a mix of young talent like left tackle Colton Miller. You also have a mix of experience and guys that have played this game for a little while in the NFL and know what to do. So I do think the Raiders are going to have some success running the football on this Bills front, as we saw the Jets last weekend. Do you?
Yeah, I think that the Raiders front, like you said, is underrated. I think that the Bills defensive front, though, is just too good. They, like the 49ers, have a lot of depth along their defensive line, and I think that's going to make it tough for the Raiders to get that kind of movement. I agree with you that it's a better group than what people think on paper. They've got some young talent. They've got some continuity year over year, and that's been shown as well. They had a great game this last week. But I really do like that Bills defensive front as a team that doesn't necessarily have a bona fide superstar, but they have a lot of depth. There's not a lot of drop off there.
Oh, I agree. And I think they're going to be even better this week. So speaking of running back props, we don't have a number for Josh Jacobs or expected number, but do we like him to be a boom or a bust in this game? Last week, massive bust. This week, I think he gets back on track a little bit more.
You know what? You might be right, but I think I'm going to have to disagree with you there. I really do like the chaos that the Bills cause up front there. They've got Ed Oliver in the middle, Daquan Jones there. I think is a very underrated player. The edges are good. You saw Leonard Floyd in his first game in a Bills uniform play very well. They've got A lot of good depth, like I said. Shaq Lawson there is a backup. Has got a lot of experience in the NFL, and I just think I'd have to take the under here. It's gotta love Josh Jacobs as a player, but that front is, I think, underrated as well. That Bills front, and I think that they can hold them under there.
I'm leaning on more of the boom. I think they're going to run him a lot and then work in play action with Jimmy G. That's their one way to stay in this game. But again, we agreed to disagree there. So that was our week 2 matchups here on Win the Line. Should be a good one. One game, Max, that you're looking most forward to this weekend.
Man, this weekend, shoot, sorry. Here. This weekend, I think the game that I got to lean on here is the Ravens Bengals game. Sorry that I wasn't quite ready for that one. But yeah, the Ravens Bengals game there, that you got that division game. You got a couple teams that maybe didn't perform the way they wanted to. Ravens still getting the win. Obviously, Bengals looking putrid, but they're both going to want to bounce back and kind of show who they are. And I think they both that's going to be a fun matchup this weekend.
Definitely. I'm excited to see what the Patriots offensive line can do against Miami Dolphins and see if they're good enough to put up points to compete with Miami on Sunday night. But anyways, that was Win the Line for week 2. Tanner Kern joined alongside Max Forde here. We'll see you next week for another episode.